science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction. Fiction. Fiction.
Good intuitive tidings, Cognonauts. My name is Ayla, and I'll be your host on Exofathom tonight. We're back after a short hiatus, and I am joined by these two faces in squares above me, Nick and Mike. How are you guys doing tonight?
Pretty good. Pretty good. How are you?
I could complain, but I won't. Mike?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. It's good to be back at the home base.
Yeah, shuffling these papers.
All the sound effects.
Yeah, I was actually going to debut a couple sound effects. I bought this really cheap little gizmo, but y'all are going to be spared tonight. Today's episode is going to be on intuition. So super exciting. Those of you joining us, wherever you are, Nick, we've got this streaming on a couple places, not just YouTube, but...
Oh, we're on YouTube and Facebook currently. I have to upgrade so we can start live streaming, but this mirrors to Rumble and Odyssey as well.
Shout out to those locations. So yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll try to make this fun. It's Friday, and we're gonna try moving future episodes to Fridays at about 8 or 8:30. And so let's dive in tonight's intuition. Now, just to start out with a quick definition, it's a noun, the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. Albert Einstein has a nice quote. He says, "I believe in intuitions and inspirations. I sometimes feel that I am right. I do not know that I am." What do y'all think about intuition? Do you think it's like gut instinct? How would you kind of describe it if you had to?
What do you think about it? What do you think about it? Good question.
What do you think about it?
Well, let's see. Well, I mean, this is going to be tough, right? Because even the definition kind of feels like it's not 100% on the pulse of something. And I think because I was obviously giving this some thought, intuition to me almost feels like a certain intangible thing. Almost like when you're able to pinpoint it disappears. Kind of like a dream. So to me, it feels a little bit more intangible than because we have this Hollywood notion of what intuition is, where it's like this voice in your head says, "Don't get on the plane," and then the plane crashes. Mm-hmm. So you have this very concrete proof that you were right about something. Mm-hmm. And I think that happens to people a lot, but I also think that intuition is a bit more subtle. So to me, it's kind of almost hard to define. That's kind of how I define it.
Right. I like how you mentioned to this, the minute you shine a light on it, it disappears in a sense. Mm-hmm. Kind of like stars. If you look at a star out of the corner of your eye, it's sharper than if you were to look directly at it, which is interesting.
Yeah, because it doesn't really hold up to scrutiny, right? Because it's well, how did you know? I felt it. Okay, right. That's as deep as it goes. I mean, yeah. You might be able to do some sort of psychoanalysis of the person and maybe pick up on cues they got, but it doesn't go much deeper than that.
For me, it's I guess it's the feeling of I want to say wisdom that presents itself. Like you've been through a certain situation so many times that you've been able to kind of compress the knowledge down into a feeling. And it just kind of comes very naturally, whether it be something technical. Like I imagine Einstein is probably think of intuition and applying it to physics and stuff. Like when he just feels like that gut feeling is right. And it presents itself as a gut feeling. But too, even with people, like you've been through certain situations or certain types of people so many times that you just get this gut feeling that they're gonna take a certain action or they're gonna do something.
Hmm.
So to me, it's like it's yeah, it's the immediate feeling of wisdom without being able to put it into a nice short sentence.
Oh boy, those are both very good ways to talk about it. And I like that
Mm,
you brought up the like interpersonal nature of it because we'll get into that a little bit later on how it intuition can be really helpful in like yeah, person to person situations, especially. Which makes
mhm.
sense, we're social creatures and we communicated for a long time without language, I would imagine or minimal language. So there's a lot of maybe like you're saying that knowledge, like lots of little subtle cues that we can't put our finger on, but we're receiving.
Mhm. Yeah.
Definitely.
I I wonder also, Mike, is it do you think it's just pattern recognition? Or do you
Um,
think there's something else there?
it might also be the a little bit of pattern recognition, a little bit of prediction. I'm guessing maybe adding a few more variables. But I think
Mm,
pattern recognition plays a big role in it.
yeah. Well, because you were saying wisdom, and I was thinking, like, yeah, I can see that for sure. Because if you've been in certain situations and you've experienced them before, odds are you might know how the next one will turn out, which raises
Mhm.
kind of a question about free will almost. It's like over a certain amount of time, if you've experienced infinity sets of experiences, could you, I mean, simulate an intuition by just knowing all of the outcomes?
You would have to juggle
Hmm.
multiple outcomes for like an intuitive feeling. So you might feel you're right going down one road, but by saying you're going right or that you're correct, then you're going down one road. And
Hmm.
with free will, there's always that very small, above zero possibility that it might end up the other way. So
Right.
even if you've experienced an infinite amount of cases of something, just due to the nature of free will, there's always a chance that uh, your intuitive feeling is going to be wrong.
Yeah. And that's also doesn't factor in that people sabotage themselves too. So,
Yeah, you could
yeah.
just choose the opposite of what your gut's telling you for
Hmm.
Yeah.
sure. Well, oh yeah, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just being in agreement. You definitely. I mean, as I like to think that on the show, I'm the expert at self sabotage. So yeah, you can always choose the opposite of what your gut is telling you.
You'd be surprised, my friend. Um, no, but it's funny, Nick. You brought up this sort of made up character who lives 1,000 lives or something. Just a couple episodes ago, we did an immortality discussion. I think I hosted that one too. And that one was really fun because towards the end, we started imagining what it would be like to be truly immortal, to be alive when the earth dies, when our sun dies, to be floating around somewhere with that. Like, didn't we talk about jetpacks at some point? Um,
Hmm.
and so to think about intuition from the lens of an immortal, that's interesting to just kind of think through. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. I think there's also a spiritual element to it. Maybe spiritual is a bad word, but
I'm hip to it.
maybe metaphysical is a better word. Because it does feel like you're tapping
Witchy.
in. Like something is tapping you, or you are tapping into something. It almost
Mhm.
feels external
Yeah,
intuition sometimes.
the whole Jesus hold the wheel sort of thing. Like you're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
go out on whatever God tells you to go out on.
right.
That can be a little bit in the realm of the divine, but that can also be dangerous because then like this whole notion of being right is extremely dangerous in certain situations, especially
Yep.
something like morally or uh, being right by divine um, impetus, divine inspiration,
Providence.
divine intuition.
Mm.
Hmm.
Mm,
Well,
well,
yeah, and like it's interesting too because it robs you a little bit of agency. It's like, well, my otherworldly intuitive source guided me to do this, and so somehow it kind of takes away maybe responsibility, for better or worse. I could see it going both ways. Um,
That's interesting. I don't know. I don't know if I would consider, and it's not that I'm just like I don't see it, but I'm actually like introspecting now, and I'm like, do I consider my intuition a part of me?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I really don't. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, I think. Oh, go ahead.
I take it in as like another sensor, like another sense. So I definitely consider it part of me. And when I screw up and I get, or my intuition was wrong, then it's like there's a bug somewhere in my internal processing of my senses.
Mm.
Oh, it's so interesting. Well, and that gets to this next question that I have for both of you. Do you remember a time where you used your intuition either successfully or unsuccessfully, good or bad? Some examples that I came across in my literature is when you think of a friend and they pop up suddenly. Or maybe when you take an umbrella out on a sunny day, no indication that it's going to rain, and then it rains. Something that seems like a coincidence, but there's something there. And to speak to that last point, there's a really funny glitch in the matrix when it comes to synchronicity and coincidence. And I think that it's tempting to look at intuition and ascribe a level of coincidence or serendipity to that. All in that vein of what's tough to define, what borders on something spiritual, internal, external. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there to think about. And the first example, thinking of a friend and they pop up, I used to work in this little acupuncture clinic, and it was a very community kind of setting. And it was really funny how you see so many patients and they come and go. You have regulars, you have folks go and come back. And all the time me and another mention a patient we hadn't seen in a while. And literally like that day, next day, they walk in or call or they send an email. And I think that was one of the interesting things where a little bit intuition, but also a little bit serendipity. And I don't know, like, are they the same? Is one an event and one a feeling?
I think there might be two sets of intuition, and probably more, to be honest. But just when I was thinking of what you were saying, like environmental and interpersonal, like Mike said, with the sort of relational aspects of intuition, I feel that I get more of that end of intuition than environmental. Like my best example of environmental intuition is like when somebody sketchy walks into a room and you sort of feel a weird vibe about that person, or the atmosphere sort of changes, or you feel like something dangerous might happen in that atmosphere or that environment. But I feel like those are a little bit less, and that's probably just because I haven't gone anywhere in like 2 years. So maybe if I start going places, then I might have that intuition come back to me. But
or if we had a ghost or something exciting,
yeah.
Is that how you felt when I first walked into Starbucks? You're like, this character.
Yeah, this
I got to keep an
sketchy
eye on.
guy.
this 16-year-old kid with his book bag. He's trouble. Yeah.
Here to steal all the green tea.
Yeah.
Long
That's it.
hair. What is that? Sketchy guy.
But yeah, that is to say, like, I feel like for me personally, intuition is much more of an interpersonal, like, vibe thing. Feeling people's feelings, understanding how somebody might be thinking about something, what they might not be saying about something. That's where I feel it more than the sort of like environmental, don't get on the plane intuition, But, then again, it's like, knock on wood, I haven't been on a plane that was going to crash, or, I haven't decided to make that, choice not to get on the plane. So
that actually happened to me. I was going to get on a plane to Phoenix, and I remember having this weird feeling. And so I like paused at some point. And because I paused, I didn't get on the plane, and I got a phone call that said, "Oh, you don't need to go to Phoenix anymore." So I got off the plane, or I didn't even get on it. I just walked. And then later that day, it it had like a crash landing. Everybody was fine, but it was also like, whew,
Mhm.
dodge
Jeez.
that. Yeah. But that wasn't like intuition because it was, well, maybe because I did pause. But anyway.
I just got back from Toronto, flying out there. It was like I got on the plane, and I'm like definitely afraid of flying. Like anytime
no.
you hit like a little bit of turbulence,
Oh
I'm
no.
grabbing onto the arms. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is how I'm gonna die. We're all going down.
Oh, you're
But
that
then the second-
passenger. It's
Yeah,
like
that
mild
guy.
turbulence, and you're like on some old lady.
Yeah.
She's like, it's okay, Sonny.
He's like, stop calling me your grandma. Get away.
You're buy me a vodka.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. The most interaction I got in years.
Aw.
But I was sitting there and I was like, I have to get off. I just got to get off this point. This is not going to go well. All these things. And it felt like intuition, but I slowed down and realized it was just more of my phobia. It was like a fear-based reaction.
Mhm.
And that's such a like similar visceral feeling for me that it did feel the same as an intuitive sense. But luckily, like the plane didn't go down. The flight was fine.
Yeah. I wonder how much of that is also just a threat avoidance, like a deer knows when a predator is within 100 feet from them, and even if you make no sound at all, and I know a lot of hunters talk about this, it's like if you get anywhere near that deer, it knows you're there. And now, of course, they have much more sensitive instruments than we do as far as smell and hearing and stuff like that. But it does almost feel like a sort of like a animalistic connection to the earth grid, like almost that connection to stillness and in the moment sort of thing, being a remnant of a sort of like threat avoidance that animals tend to have. And that since we have bigger brains and we're able to sort of conceptualize abstractly, maybe that mechanism has sort of like morphed in humans.
Maybe.
I go for it now.
Oh, okay. I have a little notepad, so I can circle back.
Oh, God. You sure?
Oh, yeah.
This die doesn't have a 1 dot on it. It just has a logo. Interesting. I wonder too if it's something that was dulled over thousands of years of being in civilization, where we didn't have to rely on intuition too much, or so much so, because we ended up having language, written records, and all of that stuff. So I wonder too if it is that, like the last remnants of connecting to the more primal side of us.
Yeah, the psychic human. Yeah, it could be a remnant of that sort of animal psychic energy, because animals are very psychic. So,
and it makes sense why it would still exist whenever we like vibe check people, or to say the thing that the kids are saying nowadays.
Coat check?
Coat check.
Check your vibe at the door. Thank you very much. Here's your sticker. You can take your bad mood when you leave. That would actually be really fun to do. Like, anyway.
I think vibe check might be outdated, to be honest.
Oh no!
I think we're chuggy. So.
Oh God! But see, okay, that word.
It offends Ayla so much.
Well, I just learned about it the other day, and then everything that was on there, I was like, I was like, they're so very mean. We just want to have fun. And then I realized, are they being meta? Because like the first time I said the word chuggy, I was like, oh, I get it now. Because it was chuggy when I said chuggy. Like it's just you want to talk about bad vibes. That's a bad vibe word. I don't like it. You're right.
What does it mean?
It's a Zoomer's name for millennials, or like lameness of millennials.
Yeah.
So if it like millennials being lame and liking, avocado toast, that shit's chuggy.
Or
You
like
don't
being
do
an
that.
adult Disney fan.
Right.
That's
That is.
cheesy.
I agree with
It
that.
is though. I mean, well, that's the thing. There's some stuff where I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, no, fair point. Other
Yeah.
stuff, like they had all like the motivational signs, like live, laugh, love. I was
Yes, that
laughing
is.
so hard because I was like, oh, like I remember when those were really fun. But yeah, no, you're right. Like it just ruined a lot of stuff that I was like, oh.
It's like the kitshness of our generation.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. What's the member berryness of us? Like we don't deny it. We love nostalgia.
Yeah, look,
And
we
they
have
will too one
crippling-
day.
we have crippling college debt, so anything that we can make us smile, we do.
Yeah, we only had
That's so
10 good
making
years of our
sense.
lives, and it was 1990 to 2000. Okay, just let us
Lay
have
off
that.
of us. Yeah. Pick on another generation.
Sorry, we're not so nihilistic.
Yeah, exactly.
So we were talking a little bit about this psychic human, maybe this like residual animalistic instinct that we have. Now, Nick, you were talking about how like maybe we've lost a little bit of that. Animals have more of it. Mike, you said maybe that's because we have more comfort, more security, less of a need for it. But so to Nick, I ask you a question. Do you
Mhm.
remember when we were in the woods and there was no indication of any predators around, and the group of us simultaneously stopped in our tracks and turned around and left
Yeah.
to find out that there was a bear
Yeah.
in the midst? And so how would you describe your knowing in that instance? How did you
Honestly,
know?
it would have been probably the rustle of a tree branch was different than the way the wind pushes it.
Mm. So
You
it
know
was
what I mean?
environmental, like you heard something.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I could have probably. I mean, like we all definitely felt sketched out. So I mean, the feeling was there too. But I don't know. It's like this is the question, right? It's like, is it just a heightened perception of things? Because my thought is that I probably heard a tree branch rustle in a way that isn't conducive with wind, and thought there's something here.
Which is funny because I remember thinking it's far too quiet and still. And yeah, I had this distinct feeling like in my gut that like this was bad, which is why I bring up the serendipity thing, because it's like that was a legitimately sketchy thing, right? Go into the woods in the middle of the night to try to like float on water rafts, under the moonlight.
Still a
Would have
great
been
idea.
dope. Yeah, it would have been awesome.
Jesus.
Stupid bear. I know. But then at the same time, it's like, so, would I have felt sketchy without the bear? Right. And was it just a coincidence that a bear
Probably.
happened to show up in this sketchy moment?
I think there's always going to be one person that maybe is a bit fearful, but when it's everybody, then you should probably listen to that feeling. And everybody's
Right, and
like, yeah, this doesn't feel right. Like we should get out of here.
And that was weird too. Like, I don't know how, and like we were all about it. We had already driven like 20 miles. We got all of our stuff. We had trekked in a few ways, step. And then we just were like, better not.
Mhm.
So, and then it's funny though, because if it wasn't the hearing, then we did retain something from our like animalistic former selves.
Yeah, you would have to, right? I mean, you think about early humans; they had saber-toothed tigers. They had like dire wolves and shit.
Giant mammoths.
Giant mammoths. Yeah, those.
Big
I mean,
birds.
like those are the least of your worries because they're loud enough. I mean, like you got to think of the cats, man. The cats. And the
Oh yeah.
serpents.
Are the pterodactyls? No, those weren't around.
Pterodactyl. It's Land
I've
of
been
the
watching
Lost.
too.
Come on.
I've been
You're
watching too
closer.
many trailers for Jurassic Park.
You might have been closer with like giant freaking eagles or something.
Yeah, definitely.
That's right.
The
They did have
Thunderbirds,
giant
yeah.
eagles. Very cool. Well, okay, cool. So let's see, where do we go from here? We talked a little bit about subconscious sort of cues, environmental cues, perhaps a touch of divine inspiration. Now, to touch on one thing, because I've heard intuition referred to as a sixth sense, it comes out to find that there really is a sixth sense, but it's not like as connected to intuition as you would think. It's called proprioception. Have y'all heard of
When
this?
somebody's staring at you.
Ooh, does that count?
Is that what it is? I thought that's what it is. The feeling that you get when somebody's staring at you.
Well,
Like
it is
when you're not looking at them.
maybe. I mean, maybe that's part of it, but like the main definition I had was the body's ability to locate its own limbs even in darkness. So like if you were to
Ah.
close your eyes and then I said like touch your nose, you'd be able to do it. I mean, you guys could both try right now because I tried earlier. I can do it. Can you do it?
Mhm.
There's a small percentage of the population who can't do it.
For
Yeah.
why?
Well, that's like a whole nother story. It's like I think it has to do with a gene actually, which is really interesting. But yeah, there's like a study where they had a bunch of people hooked up to stuff and they were trying to figure out like why they can't locate their body. But just pausing on that for a moment, that is kind of weird. Like even if you just think about it, like close your eyes and think about any part of your body, like you always know where it is in space, and that's your brain's job. Protected
Yeah,
in your little
because our little brain, roots go all the way down to the ends of our extremities. Of course we know. Like have you seen the nervous system thing? It's like where they take the
Yeah.
skeleton and it's just the brain, the eyeballs, and the nerves.
the eyeballs are the worst
It's
part
so
of that
creepy.
thing.
But
It's frightening.
that's what a human is, right? Like those little nerve endings go all the way down to our extremities. And it's like, yeah, so as long as our little nerve endings are encased by these, skeletons and
machines.
meat socks, it's like,
Oh, you call those meat socks. That's like worse.
mhm. I'm just trying to be as off-putting as possible.
No, it's mission accomplished. Level
Mhm.
unlocked. Maximum chugginess. I guess you could
Oh,
use it that way too, right? Like just
Is it? I feel like it's chuggy to say chuggy.
it is. I know. I just
Yeah.
did it.
That's the trap, right?
Oh,
You can't even
God.
acknowledge it. This is how the Zoomers get us.
Yeah, I'm not using that word ever again. Moving on.
This is our karma for
Um,
boomer. That's what that is.
No.
Oh, I know. Yeah, we were pretty mean too. I'm sorry to any of you out there listening.
No, not at all. This is the way nature works. I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
This is the way. So Bill Hicks, he has this interesting quote. It's called watching television is like taking black spray paint over your third eye. Now, I mentioned this because as I was reading everything, I got a little bit muddled in the differences between a third eye, the sixth chakra, which I think is the crown chakra, and intuition. Are all three of these the same thing? Are they different?
I don't think that they're much different, to be honest, because you can all call it the mind's eye too. I was also thinking about this
Mhm.
too. Is it any difference than your inner voice? Like, does intuition
Right.
and your inner voice overlap, or are those two distinctive things? Like the inner voice does more than intuition does, but I'm wondering if those come from separate sort of mechanisms.
For me, they can argue with each other.
Interesting.
They may not always agree.
Mhm.
Like when you don't follow your intuition, because the inner voice overrides it for one
Mhm.
reason or another. Like with the airplane example, right? I had to tell myself just to calm down. If I followed my gut feeling, I would have got off the plane.
Right.
But had to sit there and have a little argument, and that inner voice overrides it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, yeah. And I think there's a lot of instances where my gut will say something that I'm like, I know you're wrong, gut. Shut up. It's like,
Well,
it's wrong. So
and-
that's like, where is it coming from?
And we say it. We know where it's coming from, and it's the gut, right? Like they've already proven that there are neurons in your gut, and that you have a certain level of electro sort of like activity in the same vein that your brain does.
I will give you 2 sentences on that. So
Okay.
I had a thing here about where is the third eye. And it says, like you were saying, Neurons are cells found in your brain and central nervous system that tell your body how to behave. There are approximately 100 billion neurons in the human brain. Interestingly, your gut also contains 500 million neurons, which are
Mhm.
connected to your brain through nerves in your nervous system. So, like you're saying, yes, it's one of those weird things where our gut, like, it's just weird that, like, okay,
Well, then you get into like a very weird supposition, because the gut
chicken and
is
egg.
well, the gut is where all of the bacteria, viruses, and fungi live in our body.
Oh
So
my God. So, like,
are we just puppets for a whole bunch of bacteria? Like, is that the bacteria a host
well,
saying, "No, don't
I
do
mean,
that.
our, like,
Don't go through that hallway."
right, it's like venom just speaking to you.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I think that, like, our 100 billion neurons can match 500 million neurons. Like, it's not a fair fight, but they definitely do have an influence. So I think I do like your idea of this, like, alien venom fungi creature
Well,
absconding
we're
with
more
us.
bacteria and viruses than we are actual human beings. So
I hate that fact. That
Yeah.
fact is the worst. I mean,
we're just
Ew.
a walking like
cesspool.
Borg of microorganisms that had decided to coalesce into an avatar and have sentience. Like, if they like, we're just bacteria, walking bacteria with sentience. Oh, that's creepy.
That's pretty cool.
It is kind of cool.
There's something interesting too. Like, I believe back in medieval times, they would say that the gut is the pit of your soul. That's where, like, your soul, that's where all, like, the evil went.
Mm.
And it could be from these sorts of feelings that came up. It was also home to, I believe, like, the black bile. We can get to, like, the four humors, that sort of stuff. And to say that we have a gut feeling and, like, tying it down to that, the bacteria and all of that, or the neurons, it's kind of strange to think about that. Yeah, somewhere that's like the pit of your being almost.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
we seem to have three seats of the being, right? It's the heart, the head, and the gut. And so it's like we have the neurons in our heart affect our emotions, love, compassion, all of that type of stuff, anger. Then you have the gut, which sort of governs intuition, cravings, and then you have your head that does all the other rationalizations.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and
go for it.
I have a small little joke, which is that if the medieval people were right about the gut being the home of evil,
Then just reverse it, because they were always wrong.
Damn.
They didn't call it the Dark Ages for no reason. These people are literally upside down with their ideas. They thought the Earth was flat.
Oh, damn. So, like, our gut's good? Okay. Well, then never mind. I was going to try to, like, get a percentage going to be like, humans are only this much bad, which is good. But then they kind of go and flip it. So now we're, like, mostly evil with our 100 billion evil neurons. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if it would be good to, like, govern yourself in that sense of, like, all right, what does my gut say? What does my heart say? What does my head say? Or which 2 out of 3 are in agreement here? Like,
Right.
like a little,
I like that.
Democracy.
Yeah.
Right,
You have to have
right,
a vote. Yeah.
Yeah.
Majority rule.
I love that. Well, and going back to like the more mystical idea of stuff, the third eye, like you were saying, Nick, yeah, it's called the mind's eye. People also sometimes call it this like inner eye, inner knowing, and it's an esoteric concept of a speculative invisible eye, usually depicted as located on the forehead, which provides perception beyond ordinary sight. In Indian spiritual traditions, the third eye, that's kind of like in those traditions. And then you have the sixth chakra, which represents intuition, which has many aspects, being intuitive, as we discussed. It could be psychic, clairvoyant, clairaudient, or a medium. So it's really interesting because they have this concept of intuition that can be really functional and really based in like interpersonal environmental situations. And then you have this concept of like chakras and third eyes, inner knowing, these, like spiritual components to something that we feel. And I think that's really interesting. To go just a step further about the gut, having these neurons and having that kind of stuff. I do think about the chicken and the egg concept because you have that gut feeling. Did we say gut feeling because we had a sense that our stomachs know something? Is that a throwback to like medieval IBS? Is where that
what
term
happens
came
when you're
from?
afraid? What do you feel when you have fear? I mean, at least for me,
Yeah,
it's
but
like a
like
cold flush in my stomach. It's like the
true,
blood
but like
leaving my stomach.
a gut knowing isn't, does it always have to be fear? Because it could be
No,
like
no. I
other
mean,
feelings
other
too.
feelings. Yeah, yeah. Happiness. You get butterflies, right? You get butterflies in the stomach. That was a whole thing.
Right. Okay.
Um,
Okay, great concept because what I wanted to do is connect this to like the pineal, like, okay, so people who talk about the pineal gland as being like what we refer to when we talk about the third eye. And the hippies love talking about pineal glands, but I do think it is interesting that in Egypt you've got like artistic representations of the pineal gland. So I just bring this up because it's like funny to have turns of phrases that can be confirmed by scientific review. Like I think that's just turns of phrase that become validated and are like,
yeah, because
I
we
don't know.
forget why we said it in the first place, and then we just consider the people from 1,000 years ago dum dums that didn't know anything, and then we use our super smart science to affirm the fact that they were right all along.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
kind of where I'm getting at, where I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know if like how did we know back then? I think that's my biggest thing is like maybe we had more sophisticated units of or methods of observation than we think we did, or there was some other like woo woo stuff going on. But I don't know. For
I think
me,
it's
that's like
the
an area that's
folklore.
fun.
Yeah.
Folklore gets pretty powerful. The like intuition is so powerful that it can like I'm always held in awe and wonderment when I think about ayahuasca and how it was originally made. Because if you study it from a scientific point of view, it's you're taking one plant, grinding it down, taking another, so that the proteins in one plant don't actually work.
Hmm.
How do you know that from an intuitive sense?
Right.
And there's these anthropologists that talked to shaman, and they just said, "Well, this was the knowledge that was given to us by the gods." It was sort of, it ends up being this intuitive process that they go down to make the stuff, and like where it gets down to the sort of wisdom. And Nietzsche kind of backs us up with the idea, like he says, like we've disconnected ourselves from the divine beast, and our quest to be sort of very civilized, and our quest to be methodical, be scientific, to really raise up knowledge, we've let go of wisdom and in another. I'm using this, I guess, as a synonym, and intuition. And that was such a big part of being a human. Like think about hunting, right? You're first hunting a new territory.
It's all feeling.
Yeah, it's all feeling. Like where is it at? Even when you're out in the when I was out boogie boarding, which wave I picked wasn't governed by I wasn't calculating in my head how high this wave is going to be, how the
Hypotenuse.
Yeah, I wasn't like, oh look, it's this wave is going to make a right triangle and it's going to be fantastic. It was a gut feeling of like, I want to go after this wave, not this wave, but
This feels like a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that for sure, because it definitely is. It's definitely it's I don't know, the wave analogy is good, because that is one of those things where you couldn't really put a finger on why you decide to make that decision, but it's just the one that feels correct. And maybe that's what so much of intuition is. It's just like this feeling that the decision that you make, that's the correct decision. And sometimes maybe you don't even need a whole lot of, reasoning. And that was going to make me ask you guys, because what Mike reminded me of is flow state. And so flow state is that state in which I think that you're almost like using intuition as a vehicle to get something accomplished. You're
Mhm.
almost using that same sort of intuitive energy to get a task done.
Yeah, there's I still get criticized for it, but a lot of the time when I'm programming, I don't think. I'll
Mhm.
just kind of let intuition take over, and anything I run into, or things I run into in the mix of programming. But that's because you want to hit that flow state when you're coding. You don't
Mhm.
have to think about problem. If you run into a problem, you just take care of it. You
Right.
just keep going, and you're able to produce a lot of hopefully good quality code. But this is also too, you're in the state of coding or in the state of writing a computer program. You're supposed to do all of your thinking before you write the code. And of course, there's going to be logical cases that come up that you may not think of. So you really shouldn't have time to go back to the drawing board and design it in. You just have to take care of it right there, which is
Mhm.
an intuitive thing. Right?
Yeah.
It's also like fighting too. You can have your fight plan, you can do all your training, you can figure it all out. But when you're actually in that fight, as
Mm.
Mike Tyson said, we all have a plan until you get hit, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
you can't think anymore. You just have to act and follow that intuition.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that goes
Very
back to
true.
the Nietzsche quote about, our higher and lower selves. It definitely feels like we did kind of give up something when we decided to prioritize the rational mind, which, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's definitely given us so many great things in the world. But it also makes me wonder what we might have lost.
Like we need to find a balance, like all good things.
There we go.
Yeah, that's the word of the day, let me
Yeah.
tell you. Well, and it's funny too because I was thinking about like why did we start studying like guts and looking for neurons in there, like so there's this really interesting way how like even though rationality and logic is like the guiding kind of light for us right now, but post um like just because we're being very rational these days. It's interesting to think about the driving force behind where we put our focus and attention on. So like, yeah, like we wouldn't have studied certain things unless we were curious about them or we had some sort of like personal experience, like butterflies in your stomach, sick to your stomach, punched in the gut, that kind of interaction and experiential knowledge had to have fueled us to like build scientific study on those things.
Of course, but it's not because it's so unscientific until we find ways to hook up scientists to like gut chips to measure different levels of, you
Gut
know,
chips. Oh, like
yeah,
gut microchips?
yeah, where
Okay.
like it can measure like the firings of the neurons that are happening in the gut or whatever. People are going to say that it's unscientific, and we've created this weird social game where we prize rationality and prize science, but have no idea what we mean when we say those things. Because
Right.
it's pretty in vogue to say like follow the science.
In
Well,
vogue.
yeah, like you don't even know what that means, and then you criticize, or people will criticize people that doubt science. Science, the scientific method is that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to doubt. If you give me results, I'm supposed to be able to recreate it. So we get past that sort of gut feeling into something that is
Mm.
empirical. But
Yeah.
somebody has to be the forerunner to run on that intuition to find something that can be empirically recreated over time.
Yeah, yeah, you have to be a little bit bold, like Avi Loeb, who's all about aliens over at Harvard. Respect. But also too, I saw this. Huh?
It's Nick's favorite topic.
Oh,
Man,
I know.
that guy's going to be
Super
talking
cool.
about that stupid rock for the
Oh,
next
Moa
30
Moa,
years.
man, it's the best rock. Good episode. Y'all should watch
To
it.
be fair, a Moa Moa is fun to say.
It
It is.
is.
Sure.
It's very fun to say. And yeah, I did see like something. It was like an article about research, and it's just so funny how like we're in this age of information. And actually, this is perfect because we're going right into this next section about information and the power of intuition. But before we go there, Nick, did you want to just add anything about pineal glands, Egypt, chakras, third eyes?
Mm. No, I think you guys probably covered it pretty well, but it is notable to point out that that has been within our sort of religions and mythologies from the very beginning, or at least the beginning that we know of.
I
Because
do have, I guess, 2 questions
Hmm.
about pineal glands and third eyes. One, well, I guess 3. One, do you think a third eye is an actual thing? 2, do you think your third eye is open? And 3, do you use it?
Oh man.
Mine is. Oh, sorry, Ayla, go ahead. Yes.
Oh no, go ahead. Go for it, Nick.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll answer then. I don't know if it's a real thing per se. I think it's kind of a psychic thing. In that, like, it's almost like a psychic construct that has to do with our aura, almost, or the energetic field that we produce. So I kind of see it in that respect, where it's not actually like a physical part of your brain. I mean, maybe your pineal gland, who knows? But it almost feels like, like our logo, like the little cognonaut thing, like that. I see it as like a sort of like an energy field that emanates from your forehead, because that's where your thoughts are created. But yeah, I do actually feel my third eye doesn't close in the morning, and I have to kind of wait sometimes, because I'll wake up in the morning and then like maybe I'll try to go get coffee, and I'll realize that like I'm not seeing with my eyes, I'm actually seeing with my forehead, and I have to like stop the car and like put my hand on my forehead for like maybe 10 minutes until it subsides. But it's usually right like as soon as I wake up, so I have that like dream thing where my third eye is open dreaming, and then it doesn't really want to go to sleep after my body is already awake. That, or I have an aneurysm, so I don't know.
I was going to say, to walk a day in your shoes would just be so interesting. So fucking interesting. Well, yeah, and I'm glad that you talked about like energy fields, because yeah, like we're starting to know a lot more about like gravitational fields and like the Higgs boson. The Higgs field, like that's a thing, and that's a thing that we only suspected was a thing, and we only recently were like, oh shit, that's a thing. So along the lines of like what we intuitively know, maybe what our ancestors intuitively know, or what they were taught by gods or aliens or whatever, it stands to reason that somewhere down the line we would discover that like, oh yeah, there is some sort of like energy that we generate just by being beings with like, light guiding our thoughts and stuff like that. As to like the third eye, I thought I knew what it meant. Like I would.
Those 3 eyes right there.
Oh gosh.
There's the third eye.
Yeah, no, okay. So, and Nick can attest to this. Yesterday I had a little bit of like a moment, because so for those of you listening, you might not know, so I'll just give you a quick summary. I had like a little near death last year while sedated in the ER on ketamine. And I think they overdosed me a little bit en route to the hospital or something. It was for an injury. And so, dying a little bit in that mode was quite interesting, because I suddenly became like one with my consciousness only, which is really hard to describe, and I still don't really fully understand it. But what I mean to say is yesterday I was thinking about like, if we do exist after death, right? Like we don't know if there is life after death, but if we did, and it was really just consciousness based, then that means that whatever we are after is here now. And if you quiet your mind long enough and try to tap into what I would imagine is the third eye, the thing that opens and you like collapse into down the road or something, then that's a really interesting concept, albeit frightening. So I think that's kind of where I am with the third eye, is it's either something that like is tethered to us now in these bodies, or it's the thing that remains after we leave. Does that make sense?
Can you clarify on that last sentence?
So like okay,
Like it's a part of
throughout
your soul.
kind of, yeah. Like if you were to say like there's an indwelling being, like no matter what happens in your life, there's a consciousness that experiences it. There's your voice inside your head, something untouchable, something always accessible. It's like our consciousness, the thing that thinks and feels and experiences. If you sit down and meditate and think, who am I? What is that? What is that voice? Who is that? Is it me? What is that? You keep exploring that. I think you start to appreciate, um, like, if there was going to be something that survives beyond you and that was it, like, that's kind of weird. And that could be the third eye, like a soul, I guess.
I got you. Could it be like if our human body has two eyes, then our soul is just a cyclops sort of thing?
Ooh.
Something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, just like, but a little bit less physical, like more metaphorical.
I got you.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if that's a thing. Again, like it's a very weird experience, and I don't know how I think about the third eye. Like this is actually the first time I've really thought about like what is that? How do I think of that? How do others define it?
Have you seen The Northman?
I don't think so. Is that a movie, documentary?
It's a movie that came out maybe a couple weeks ago. Very artsy fartsy movie directed by the same guy that did The Lighthouse.
Ooh, and it's got Anya Taylor-Joy. Love her.
Alexander Skarsgård. Well, one of my favorite actors. Willem Dafoe.
Oh, this is the one where he's the Viking. Yeah, was it good?
It's really good. I enjoyed it, but you have to enjoy. If you didn't like The Lighthouse, you wouldn't like The Northman. You do have to enjoy kind of the artsy fartsiness of it, and you have to enjoy not being explained everything.
Okay, wait, back up. How do you define artsy fartsy?
There's sort of to me it's more in the cinematography and in the way the story gets narrated. It becomes a little bit abstract. You're dealing more with I like something like a Marvel movie is very concrete, right? There's explosions. There's a very cause and effect storyline. The characters aren't too complex. They might get a little deep, but not extremely deep. Everything is very apparent. Everything's very clear. Artsy fartsy things are much more gray, and they're up for argument between people that watch the movie. And the cinematography takes it goes outside the standard of quick cuts. So this is an action movie, and there's a lot of sort of like tracking shots. I mean, shots that follow characters that aren't even the main focus of the action, but the action happens around them to create a feeling of suspense, which is really effective. So it kind of deviates from the norm and doesn't expect you to follow. Like it doesn't care if you fall asleep during the movie. Whereas a more mainstream movie would, during the production process, would be like, I don't know. I don't think audiences would hang on to this. I think they're going to like check their phone or something. And then, cuts or reshooting would happen. This doesn't care anything about that. It's either you're going to like it or you're not. Again, very much like The Lighthouse. And the selection of imagery becomes very metaphorical rather than concrete. For example, in Lighthouse, there's a thing where like Willem Dafoe lights. I'm sorry, continue.
I was just gonna say, yeah, we could definitely do a show on the Northman. Did they have a third eye moment or like your death stuff or consciousness?
So there's a scene where it's in the beginning, but the character that grows up to be Alexander Skarsgård goes into a shaman cave where he's pretty much going through the the rites of initiation of becoming a king or going within the bloodline of a king.
Oh.
And it goes through this thing where you have to act like an animal and then they meditate. And during that meditative state, there's an out of body experience. And out of body experience, like you had, I wonder if the thing that you're seeing with, because like he looks down, he's floating up in the air as a kid, and he looks down and he sees himself meditating. Or he sees two people meditating, or however many people are in the room. I wonder if that's the third eye in action, that sort of soul state that transcends beyond the physical.
Well, I like the term soul state. That sounds dope. Yeah, and yeah, there definitely was a bit of this like Vitruvian man sort of like floatiness to it. And then you zip out of there or something like that. But yeah, I mean, we should do an episode just on soul state, or like maybe like celestial body, because people like what makes me what I guess what's been interesting to me are the people who claim to have outer body experiences, like you said, through meditation in the movie, or even through like other means. Like I'm curious about that, because it's either, you know, made up, or it's either something that people can do of their own will. And I think that's so interesting. Like Nick waking up in the morning and knowing that like your third eye is sort of like open, like that sort of connection to that is so cool, because normally I'm not that connected to it. So it was very much like a Doctor Strange moment where it's like, whoa, and now I'm like, what do I do with that?
Your soul is like knocked out of your body. You had to like stare at it.
Twas weird. Yeah.
Stare at your body. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well,
yeah, no, I just think that the third eye becomes one of the main inputs of intuition, whether we understand it or not.
yeah. Well, yeah. And I wonder if that gets to the idea of intuition being something external, like Nick was asking. Is that something specific to me, or is it that spiritual external knowing? You know, and even him, he's going to be a king and a leader. He ends up going through this experience so that he can maybe bring back wisdom. Maybe.
Maybe
Going into that fifth dimensional space, right? It's all just ties back into getting into that fifth dimensional space.
And this is where Nick gives his spiel for
Oh
the
no,
Gateway
I won't do
series.
it.
Oh, what? That was so perfect.
At some point, we'll do it. Yeah.
well, that's actually pretty interesting that you that we've hinted at that, because like through binaural beats, through things like that, there's this notion of eye dozing, of getting high off of sound, and different. It's mainly due to like very different wavelengths hitting your ears, one in the other, and it confuses your brain, and you experience being high. I forget if it's like a very specific wavelength, like, or two wavelengths together with a combination, they're like intersecting, if that makes sense. But no, it brings in that notion of being in a altered state in order to be able to experience that third eye or that intuition.
Or to access the absolute, which is talked about in the first couple episodes that we did here on Exofathom about the Gateway experiment. Good stuff. Nick's not going to plug it, but I will, because I was thinking about the absolute the other day, and I was like, was that what I saw? So moving into some of the more like sciencey stuff around intuition. So I just had some quotes about intuition. So with this one here says, when you reach the end of what you should know, you will be at the beginning of what you should sense. Dun, dun, dun. That's from Khalil Gibran from Sand and Foam. I think he's like an author. But so I watched this TED Talk. It's by Katrine Kajir, and it's called The Power of Intuition. And I think she has kind of like a business background. So again, good job on Mike to highlight that interpersonal nature of intuition, because she advocates that we should absolutely trust our gut, that it's not something woo-woo or something like that. She advocates following your intuition, that your dreams are sort of like guided by intuition. And she mentions a book called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. And Nick, you mentioned that in terms of like having a bit more of like a quicker response. Intuition is like an accelerated knowing, maybe. So here's what she says. So she actually refers to system 1, system 2. System 1 being the left brain, system 2 being the right brain. She said system 1 is fast thinking. It has a subconscious way of operating with feeling and intuition dominating the way decisions are made. And system 2, your right brain, it's a bit slower, more analytical way of operating where logic and reason dominates. Now, I think this is really interesting because, like, historically, it seems like we've gone from left brain thinking to right brain thinking, like our ancestors versus now.
Isn't it the other way around?
Let's see. Oh, maybe it
The right
is.
brain, the
I
creative
think I'm
brain?
dyslexic.
Yeah,
All right.
I think you
I
just
think you're right.
dyslexic the whole thing.
Mm.
But I
I
picked up
just
on what
inverted it.
I
But
feel
y'all
like
know
well,
what I mean.
I understood what you were saying, which makes me feel like you just dyslexia the whole thing.
I know. Well, but I think I did in the sense that, like, I don't even know what that means, right? Because, like, we have these distinctions, but it's like if we overemphasize one side, we seek the other. And if we overemphasize that side, we seek the other, So I think it was interesting that she talks about fast thinking and slower thinking. And what was really cool was that, like, the system 1 sort of subconscious operating where you're working on feeling and intuition, it has a really good track record. If they did an experiment with car purchases where in one group they urged the people to just think fast, go with their gut. And another group, they gave them all the facts, bullets, information like that. For people who were pushed to think quickly, 75% of them were happy with their purchase. For the folks that overthought it, only 25% were happy.
Yeah, you get confounded by data, right? It's like it's like, what is it? Beginner's luck. Like somebody who starts something somebody who starts something that they have no idea about and they have no knowledge of tend to do things pretty well the first time around, but as they gain more knowledge, they start to become shittier at it because the knowing of the process of doing the thing actually starts to kind of stymie that intuitive flow that you would have had.
There's a curve that explains this too, and I forget the name of the damn curve. But yeah, as you gain more knowledge, you have less confidence in doing it. But and once you get past a certain point, the confidence goes lower, but the ability goes back up to the point that you had when you were a beginner.
I think it's Dunning-Kruger. Dunning-Kruger effect. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, it's when you feel like you know nothing about a thing, you actually feel pretty confident that you can do the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be a part of it.
Well, and what was cool about this woman's presentation was that she talks about how much data we take in every day. Like, somebody, I guess, quantified it, and I don't remember. It was like 4 hard drives worth of data every day, just from, you think about it, like, we are influenced by phones, commercials. You've all heard this spiel where we know what's up.
Well, even Mike's elbow right now is recording data because it's making contact with his chair.
Yeah, tactile thing.
Yeah,
well,
definitely.
it's not touching anything. It's touching the electrons that are pushing back.
Yeah, that's right.
So crazy. But yeah, and she said
filtered or unfiltered data.
She said both. And so she said that, like, with the system, well, that a lot of researchers are looking at intuition, because if we are going to be bombarded with all this data and have to make decisions, there's something to be said for you leaning on one system versus the other for better outcomes.
I only ask that question because I'm very interested in unfiltered data when it comes to human perception, because of schizophrenia, right? Schizophrenics have no filter, but all of us do. But they take in the same amount of information we do, in theory. So that's why I asked. So like that intuition might be the picking up of data through the filter, or that doesn't make it through the filter. That might be like if we're like a dam, right? That might be like the excess information that comes through a certain perception.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. Well, yeah, and perception and like reality construction and efficacy are three really interesting concepts because yeah, like with schizophrenia, you have a concept of the world. It just doesn't align with everybody else's, or it prevents you from being able to actuate your will or decipher your will. So yeah, that woman, Jill Bolte Taylor, who I always talk about, she studies a lot on like perception and I guess like concepts of reality, but the way that the brain conceives of it. So yeah, I mean, like super interesting stuff. Going back to intuition and like that left system thinking, they said that like when people are judging someone's honesty, like if they're lying about an event, that intuition proved more accurate in the study. And one researcher said we can benefit from letting our minds wander to another unrelated activity as the unconscious brain crunches data and makes decisions for us. So I thought that was really cool, thinking about like this alternative brain that we can lean on.
So it's the human folly to have overexalted the upper brain and sort of sequestered the lower brain into a sort of like a primitive role. You know what I mean? Where we kind of regard our lower brain as like, oh, we're better than that. You know, we're better than that medulla oblongata and amygdala and those nasty lizard brain tendencies. But you know, like there is also that element of psychic connection, obviously.
Oh, the duality of being a human. Yeah, I know it's very good to let your unconscious mind work on problems your conscious mind wants. And like again, going back to sort of I guess programming and knowledge work, as we can think of it as. There's sort of like we've built this culture around first I'll say rationality just to get it out of the way, and busyness, where productivity is king, whereas it can be very bad to be very busy and arrive at the wrong solution, right? It's almost, if we prize that sort of lower brain and that unconscious mind and that alternate mind work, to not produce so much output, but to have the right output.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There you go back to that balance again, man.
That may rely more on intuition if it's a subconscious or unconscious process to work out the trials and errors of the whole process. Now it's a balance because you still have to produce something.
Yeah.
Production always wants to see some sort of result, even if it's wrong. But that may not be the right. As we get more technologically advanced, that may not be the right approach. We may want to value intuition, the third eye, this sort of thing, more than the rational mind, or at least find a balance between the two.
Well, and the Vikings.
I'm done. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. I want to make sure I didn't cut you off. I think there's like a slight lag on my side, so I'm very sorry about that. I was just going to add that I think your Viking movie has onto something, because researchers are saying now that successful leaders and inventors have to trust intuition as much as they trust their intellect. That's going to start to become something super important. And so just to kind of hint at where we are going next, I wanted to talk briefly about how to cultivate intuition and how some researchers think that they've cracked how intuition works in our brains, and that surprisingly, emotional intelligence could be a key factor in improving your intelligence.
That sounds about right.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult to find people that are adept at understanding their own IQ and EQ.
Yeah. EQ is like such a buzzword now, and I think it's good and bad in a lot of ways, but I do like that there's more attention to sort of like this, yeah, not a sixth sense, I guess now it's like what, a seventh, eighth, 10th, 12th
Listen,
sense?
you need the synergy between your IQ, EQ, and your third eye. Right?
Yeah.
Once you establish the synergy, everything makes sense.
Get
As
your
long as it happens
IQ,
by the
your
third
EQ,
quarter.
your ESG, your MSG, your MSNBC. Yeah.
But be mindful of the law of diminishing returns on the EQ, because then you could be in trouble.
Hey, if you increase your input of MSG, you can increase the efficiency of your EQ by
Mhm.
3 folds by the third quarter. And that's our deadline, as Ayla was saying.
That sounds good to me.
I love it. I love it. Well, yeah. So on a easy sort of level, how to cultivate intuition. Just 3 steps is what, and this is again from the same TED Talk. The what is it called? The Power of Intuition by Katrine Kajir. So she says that the first thing is to have clarity in your mind, to sense how you really feel about something, remove the things that you can't control, and focus on the things that you like just focus on kind of like what it is you're cultivating, create some sort of attention around that. And the way she describes it is that thoughts get stored in your subconscious and thoughts become habits. And so like, and Nick's been talking a lot about habit building too. So it's just interesting to think about clarity being the first thing when it comes to cultivating intuition. The second thing is to just be honest with yourself and what's important to you, to have clear intention. Otherwise, your intuition won't be able to guide you. Again, I think it's the sense of uh, like maybe veering towards authenticity, trying to live your authentic life, be your authentic self, so that your brain gets repetition and knowing what you are and what you want. And your subconscious can store that and use it like a compass. And of course, that leads to the third one, which is that you train intuition like a muscle. The more you use it, the more accurate it becomes. And there's actually a study I read about in livescience.com where participants became better at using their intuition over time, that it was all about learning to use unconscious information in your brain. And so as people can become more comfortable making decisions when they apply logic and reasoning, they may also become more adept at trusting their intuition when they use it more frequently over time. Cool, huh?
Interesting.
It's a muscle.
Yeah,
So-
I never thought of it like that.
So the routine thing, there's a problem where you, or not a problem, it's just an interesting thought, where if you establish what you think you are and you repeat that thing that you think, that's what you become. So imagine if on some subconscious level I believe I'm a criminal. I believe I'm a bank robber. I'm really good at robbing banks. In fact, that's what I do from sun up to sundown. And that's what I actually believe in my unconscious mind, or conscious mind, and then push it. If I work on the routine of becoming a good bank robber because I believe it, then I become a good bank robber, right? Then that implies that humans are far more malleable than we don't really have an identity, that we enforce a sense of identity through conscious thought. And then secondary, I do enjoy this notion of releasing things that you cannot control.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
the first role in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's also a big role in Stoic thinking, that
Mhm.
that you can't control everything, let that go and focus on things that you can control.
Yeah. It's smart. It's a really good way to conserve energy. For sure. working on that, definitely. But no, I like this idea of like kind of knowing yourself. I mean, like it's just been one of those things, even getting back to like the third eye, if it's connected to like a soul self, and like you can tap into that through your subconscious. What is that? We've always been wondering about the brain body problem or the ghost in the shell. There's so many ways you can talk about it. And it's
Do you think that-
interesting.
Do you think that the intuition can be sort of gamed like that through upper brain processes, though? Isn't
Yes.
that kind of defeating the purpose?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking about. Is that there's so knowing yourself is only it's limited by the breadth of knowledge that you know, right? So imagine I was a really good drug dealer in the projects.
Your examples, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine I'm a robber. All right.
Mhm.
Imagine
Imagine bank robber. Imagine
You-
I'm yeah,
Imagine I
imagine my
kidnapped
drug
you.
yeah, right. Imagine that
what's
I
your
just
subconscious
stole a
repeating?
bunch of humans. Imagine I was a coyote smuggling humans across the border.
God.
No, like imagine I'm a drug dealer.
Can we say like a butcher?
No,
You're a
drug dealer.
sandwich maker. I can relate much
I'm-
more to a sandwich maker.
Well, I can relate much more to a drug dealer where I'm from. So, and that means I have good economic sense. I have good business sense. I know how to push things. I know how to work human interactions, all of that. And being good meaning I don't get caught. But what I don't know, because the breadth of knowledge hasn't expanded that far yet, is that I may actually be really good at trading stocks. It's the same game in reality. I may be really good at banking. I may be really good at something else. But as far as I know myself, I'm good at drug dealing. And I reinforce that every day through practices of drug dealing. And that intuition only can go so far. And that is well, while this researcher I think is on point, there's something that we have to do or bring in to expand the breadth of knowledge. Or maybe there's something out there I don't know. Maybe I'm a really good politician because I deal with so many people in the streets from drug dealing. I deal with the rich kids, I deal with the poor kids, I deal with everything. Maybe I might be actually a really good politician, and I just don't know it yet because I wasn't exposed to those areas of knowledge. But my intuition tells me that I'm a good drug dealer. And that's a little bit of the danger in trying to define what we're trying to define.
Yeah. I think that it would be difficult to capture that same sort of essence, because what I think you're pointing at is that sort of like the mysterious. There's an element of mystique about intuition as well. It's this potentiality. And so I wonder about sort of gamifying the that sort of intuitive state through the processes of analysis. Does that demystify and then just kind of render the intuition less potent or impotent? Because what you're doing is you're rationalizing a intrinsically irrational phenomenon.
I think it gets back to what you said in the beginning, which was to question whether or not intuition is just a matter of pattern recognition by the subconscious. Because
But
I think
doesn't
that's
that
kind of
demystify it in a way that where it loses its potency?
So the best way to test this sort of thing, and this comes from this may not be the best way, but the best way that I know, coming from sort of a scientific background, is to isolate the variable. So how do we isolate intuition? We put ourselves in unfamiliar situations. Like, for example, y'all were in the forest in the middle of the night. I guarantee you're every night y'all are just not exploring forests around California.
Right.
You know?
you don't know my life.
Yeah. But if you do that, then you have to rely on intuition. Like, it's the only thing you have left. So I think that may be the best way to try to accurately demystify what intuition can be.
But you still have to thrust yourself into uncertainty. And I think that that's kind of where I'm getting at too. It's like I don't think we can yogify intuition, where it's like, all your asanas, your poses, you got everything down to a science. You do it in the hot room, you do it in a cold room, you do it upside down, whatever.
Yeah,
It's like,
you have to thrust yourself in unknown uncertainty.
yeah.
Going back to the drug dealing example, every day is a uncertain day, right?
But you're gonna say you're hustling.
You are hustling. That's what you're doing. You're
That's
slinging.
a song. Every day I'm hustling.
Mhm.
It's a good
Yeah.
song.
But unknown uncertainty might be, dropping, like, stop selling drugs and you start trading stocks.
Mhm.
That might be the unknown, but you can take the same skills that you took from one place and apply it to something else.
Yeah, no. I mean, well, it's interesting. I just watched this Netflix series on Anna Sorokin, who was the fake German heiress who went by Anna Delvey, and she basically, I mean, well, I don't want to give away the whole story because I don't know if people listening have seen it, but what was interesting about it was that she was able to convince a lot of people who usually are known for their discernment. She was able to convince them of her background and status and have them trust her. And what was interesting as I was watching it is that the woman was the reporter who's kind of trying to figure out this story and make sense of it, was talking about how it could be a reflection of our society and the way that we've kind of created hidden cues that guide our subconscious intuition. So like in your drug dealing example, there's, I mean, or even just if you take anybody and you put them in one setting and drop them in another setting, there's a certain set of skills that have been honed over a period of time that makes them very dangerous to criminals. Like, no, but there's like skills that you can transfer over. I love that movie. That
You
scene
just
is like
derailed
so
the
good.
thought, man. You just took me off of the ride. Damn it.
I enjoyed the little switch road that you made.
I try to hang on so much, and then all of a sudden
I'm
it's just
sorry.
like
Yeah, you
throw
went
me
off
off
the
the
cliff.
track.
I'm
I
sorry.
drifted around the cliff. You went
Yeah.
off the cliff.
I went off.
You
the
got to
cliff.
change cars, man. You got to get a new car.
I know. Well, I guess I just meant to say that like what was cool about this story was that this idea that like we have unspoken rules and interactions and signifiers that we don't even realize we're doing. And some people can tap into that. And a lot of times it's somebody who, changed their environment and are suddenly in this new environment, doing what they do best and thriving for one reason or another.
Yeah, that makes sense. That, again, using that intuition, right? Isolating that variable. So you change the whole environment, you change the whole situation. The only thing that you have left is the conscious knowledge and the unconscious wisdom. Because I've a big problem in my life was trying to understand how knowledge turns to wisdom. And I think what it is the compression of knowledge into the unconscious mind. So you can almost call wisdom, or they call wisdom like learned knowledge, I guess, but it's the repetition of cases that become unconscious into that road. And when you isolate it, that's what you're isolating, I feel like, is just learned wisdom. And you can't express it in sentences, but you can feel it and you can make decisions based off of it.
Yeah, I mean, and like you can be right a certain percent of the time in certain situations, and you could be wrong in other situations. Again, there's this one article I read, and they said that intuitions are generalizations based on past experience, not infallible divinations of the future. And I thought that was like an interesting perspective.
Snarky.
A bit of a thumb in your nose at that.
Snap.
Right. But I like
Mhm.
how Mike is like, there is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. And I do like this idea that there's some sort of like an intuitive self that can bridge that, that can help us be a little bit more mindful, thoughtful. And
I'm going to take the platonic road and say that we're sort of plugging into that sort of universal matrix of energy and knowledge of everything that exists.
Hmm.
I know that. I mean, like, it's much more woo woo, but I do
Hey,
think
I
that,
saw
like,
it.
yeah. No, I mean,
You gotta
like
tell me.
Plato had his forms, and he said, beauty exists outside of this world, and this sort of place where we tap into it and then resource it and all of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, like, the fun answer for me is that intuition is sort of this, like, plugging in to the collective consciousness, to the sort of record of everything that is, and extracting the correct information. At least that I think that's probably the mystical explanation, right? It's like this, the message from God or whatever.
Or the unconscious collective. I like that.
I do. I like that too, because even on kind of playing devil's advocate here, you can, like, we interact with a lot of people daily. Even when we don't, we still, I feel like, subconsciously do, by the formation of our opinions, by just our body language too, just to make sure that we're always in societal norms. And in order to do that, you have to draw from the collective unconscious. We have to behave in a certain way, right? So I do enjoy that idea, and through those interactions, the wisdom or the knowledge you collected from those people end up becoming wisdom. So it still supports the original idea.
Mhm.
That intuition is that collective learned knowledge from the conscious collective or the conscious collective as well.
Yeah, I don't think that it's exclusive. But I do think that there is an element in which you could tap into the sort of, like, energetic grid of knowledge that we are all sort of producing with our tiny little, electricity emitters in our head. And perhaps the underlying factor here is that all knowledge that exists is already at our fingertips, or that all knowledge that will ever exist is already at our fingertips. And then you think about things like people being divine inspiration, people inventing things, having dreams about, how to fix something, having dreams about how to create something. Intuitively knowing the answer. Like, I've heard people talk about, like, intuitively knowing the answer to some sort of very complicated problem that they have no knowledge about, but they somehow were able to tap into the correct answer.
I would agree with the limit. I think we're limited by our language, or whatever language you're speaking. I think as the problem becomes more complex with respect to your language, then the solution becomes more complex with respect to the language that you know. If we had a language that could explain every single object, this is Wittgenstein's problem, every single thing across the universe, then yeah, you can explain things in one word or multiples in one word. But as the problem becomes more difficult, then you have to use more and more words to explain it, which becomes more difficult to explain.
Yeah, to express the knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, because if I was like, if I for some reason looked at, did a Goodwill Hunting and looked at the board and had the answer, it's like, well, I still can't tell you the steps to getting to that answer. Like, I just grab the answer. So it really is, yeah, you definitely do need to have the language in order to explain it as well.
Yeah, or like if we were in a forest, I told you to point me to the location of the most beautiful tree you found without geolocation. Just describe it to me in English words, what it looks like.
Yeah.
That would be a very difficult problem.
I'll tell you, it's tall and it's green. So there you go.
Good luck, fucker.
Made of wood.
Sorry for the swearing. I forget sometimes that we're live and we're not just like zooming as friends. But
what am I? Are you saying I'm an asshole? Is this what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Oh, thank you. Not the
Just
first.
kidding. Oh, sad. Well, but speaking of words, I like that you brought Wittgenstein or however he's supposedly supposed to be said. How is he supposed to be said? Is it Wittgenstein?
Liechtenstein.
I always say Wittgenstein, and anybody. I'm
Wittgenstein.
American. I speak freedom, so I can say whatever I want.
Well, I was gonna say, like, also too, like, yeah, I don't want to be one of those pretentious peoples that like changes the tone but it's not like, I don't know. However, if you are listening and you know how an American should say that name, please tell me. And because I like there's certain words, like if I order a croissant, I'm not gonna suddenly bust out and be like, oh yes, can I have one croissant? You know, like I can't even say it right. Like I love the French language, but I would butcher it so bad.
CWA.
Huh?
CWA. Qua.
Croissant.
Mhm.
Croissant.
Qua.
That doesn't sound American at all.
I just see ducks.
Yeah, you can say quack, but you can't say croissant. Come on.
Quacksant. No, that's not right.
Croissant. Sure.
That's totally wrong.
Some of my favorite conversations to have with my girlfriend, she's Canadian, is to argue over how colored should be spelled.
Mm.
Color is spelled.
Oh,
They're
so
just trying to
you?
smuggle U's in everywhere.
I swear
love yous.
it's not right at all.
Favorites.
Center,
Favorite.
for some reason, they spell it centre. There's an R.
I do kind of
before
like
the E.
that.
I do like
No, I
that too.
don't.
It's
I don't like it
fancy.
at all.
I love
I am
it.
a TRE guy instead of a TER. I think
Yeah, it's
it's
prettier.
aesthetically, more
Nope,
pleasing.
nope. I reject your reality and substitute it with America's.
Well, if you do cursive writing, it's much more pleasing to end with an E than it is an R. So yeah, I second Nick's vote on that.
Yeah, well, you could go fuck off. How about that?
And my intuition was right, asshole. No, I'm just kidding. So mean. I really apologize. That was mean. No, okay. So you were talking about Wittgenstein and language. And so science has, I don't know when researchers started to pull together more of this, but there's this article that talked about support for the power of intuition and the fact that intuition works through the basal ganglia and insula, two distinct regions of the brain. That's what drives intuitive decisions. So this is how intuition, I guess. Okay, I haven't even read this. I just highlighted it to circle back to. So it says here, your basal ganglia manage the stored routines and patterns that make up your experiences. Your insula takes care of body awareness and is highly sensitive to any changes in your body. Even if you're not consciously thinking about it, your unconscious brain starts working on a problem or a decision right away. Then, when you try to make a conscious decision, your brain compares that decision with the one your unconscious has already made. And here's what happens next. If your unconscious agrees with your conscious decision, your brain gives off a subtle reward response. The decision doesn't just seem logical, it also feels good. However, if your unconscious disagrees with your conscious decision, your insula detects other changes in your body. So while the decision seems logical, it doesn't feel good. As to why, if your brain has predicted a reward and your body decides differently, your anterior cingulate cortex generates an electrical signal called error-related negativity, or in non-scientific terms, an uh-oh response. Sorry, some of these articles are super cute. Yeah, error. And that's where intuition comes from. Make the right decision and your body knows it. Make the wrong decision and your body knows it. And like the doctor, you can't explain why. I don't know what doctor they're referring to. That I kind of cut and paste. This is from an article, I think it's inc.com. Yeah, it's kind of like a more businessy one, but they were talking about, the mechanisms behind it. And also, if you start to layer in emotional intelligence, people with lower levels of emotional intelligence are more likely to misread the signals that their body is sending them. And so although there's a common misconception that intuitive decisions are random and signify a lack of skill, they actually are the product of years of experience and thousands of hours of practice. And they represent the most efficient use of your accumulated experience. Interesting, huh? Yeah. I like the like the brain, the conscious and the subconscious fighting with each other, and that intuition is just describing a disagreement.
Yeah, there's that democracy that we were talking about earlier. You make
Yep.
decisions. That apparently just happens physiologically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all the systems have to be in alignment for sure.
But that might not even be right in the overall situation, which is also interesting.
Yeah, about when you should trust your intuition. And
Yeah. Because they made that seem like the intuition was right all the time, and
oh, they did, huh? Like, yeah, they could have
that's the
broken
way it
that
sounded. Yeah.
into like 4 different scenarios. Yeah, because it's like your subconscious is like, what? Fight me in my experience. What, and your subconscious is like, but it's logical. And your
Yeah,
body's
your
like, fight
subconscious
me.
is like, let's go skydiving without a parachute, and your logical brain's like, well, I was told by some lady on the internet that you're right all the time. So
Hey, there was one person who
Whee!
survived that. They bounced off the ground and broke every bone in their body, but they survived.
I saw
Well,
a Grey's Anatomy episode about that.
man,
Yeah, no. This brings me around. I'm just gonna start saying like true detective stuff at this point because intuition plays into a lot of like plain detective.
Oh, I thought you were gonna be like, okay, so now I'm a murderer, and like your examples. But no, detective is
I
good.
can't talk about that. I could be arrested for being a
Mhm.
murderer. I would never murder any. No. No. Going back.
Sorry, I made it weird. My bad.
No.
My
I made
intuition
I
went,
made
uh-oh.
it weirder by like fake presenting it and then dragging it away like I was kidding. The detective's curse is paying attention to like you had the clues under your nose, but you were paying attention to the wrong clues.
Oh, that would drive me insane.
Yeah,
my God.
and that happens in life where like depending on what you're inputting into that system between conscious and unconscious mind, if it's the wrong inputs, it's the syllogism problem where you end up with false inputs, but it comes with a true output. For example, if I said all pigs have wings and all things with wings can fly, therefore all pigs can fly. That would be true within that logical system. However, in reality, we know that pigs don't have wings. It's the same thing with the detective's curse, and that's where intuition can get you into trouble.
Yeah, no, I think so. Especially because all that pattern recognition, it wouldn't apply when dealing with anomalous situations.
Sometimes it didn't even apply with the pattern.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
So, I mean, you can be heavily biased towards something because you see 3 out of the 5 patterns that you recognize, and then start to make the assumption that you know the outcome.
Yeah.
You know.
Mhm. Yeah, and also
Like all things with wings can fly isn't necessarily true. Penguins can't fly, chickens can't fly, turkeys can't fly, and they all have wings.
Mm-hmm.
ostriches can't fly. Can they?
Moose either.
Emus are weird. Bone Collector is a really good detective movie that you made me think of with like the intuition and trying to recognize the patterns and stuff. Well, we are like a little bit over time, but just to start wrapping things up on when you should trust your intuition, there is 3 questions that you can ask yourself. Is this a regular, predictable environment? Do I have extensive experience or practice? And have I gotten plenty of feedback? So I guess the first one is that, yeah, like if your subconscious and your intuition is stronger in repeated situations, then it being a regular, predictable environment is going to lead you to trust your intuition a little bit more. If you have extensive experience or practice in something, you can trust it a little bit more, that sort of inner knowing. But then the feedback component is whether or not you are producing like good results or bad, because I believe that things start to correct as you apply them. I could flesh those out more, but I know we're getting over time here. So
I would say if you really want to build your intuition, and if you're somebody that learns from mistakes, always trust your intuition. Because, like, fuck it. Like, let the heads cool, let the engines run. Because in the end, everything you've did is just everything you've done. And that's a Corey Taylor quote from a poem that he wrote. But that's, I feel like it's like a max min sort of approach where if you always trust your intuition, you'll learn from the mistakes that you did. And really, there's never been an outcome of my intuition that I couldn't do. Like, if we're talking about maybe killing humans in like an extreme where you can question it, but fuck it, just trust your instinct, trust your intuition, see what happens.
There it is. Trust your intuition within legal limits. Please and thank you.
Or if you have authority, trust your intuition.
Well, yeah. Yeah, because they were saying like intuition isn't a substitute for data or logic or analysis or reasoning, but
No
the kind
shit.
of but the kind of intuition that comes from genuine experience, it can identify moments when your analysis is shaky or your reasoning's off.
Oh, my
But
sweet summer child.
I know.
What happened if I injected false data into your data set? You gonna trust your data? If you
Yeah.
don't-
Yeah, yeah, you gotta. There's like a certain level of like balance. Does the uh-oh bells go off? But it's also funny that like these are the ways to cultivate intuition in like a really tangible way. But I don't know about the other you guys. How else do you cultivate it? Because I know like Nick has these little cards. They're a little bit more like clairvoyance, but it's kind of a cool way
Still
to
the
try
same
to.
thing. It's
Yeah,
Zener
right?
cards. You can use Zener cards. You can use a deck of cards. My dad used to make us drill this when we were kids. You go through the deck and you pick what color suit and whether it's a face card or a number card.
Oh, that sounds
And
fun.
you just go through the whole deck and see how many you can get. And it's not like, the more you do it, the more you're going to get, but you'll start to pick up on when you feel that impulse that is correct. Because you'll feel it's almost like a little flash, like a flash of information. And you have to hit that information as soon as you get it, because if you let that sit for too long, your upper brain starts to take over. And then all of a sudden you're thinking of something different than what your gut said.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to remember that like intuition has to deal with the split reaction to something, like the initial reaction you have to something, because the longer you wait, the more time you let your upper brain start to analyze all the factors, and then you start to confound the intuition.
There was this, I forget where I learned it, but it was like on standardized testing, your first answer is often the right one. That like they did a study that people who went back and changed answers, those answers were always more changed from
Almost
good to
always
wrong than wrong to right. Yeah. And there's other ways that you listeners could probably do this. There's like, third eye activation videos, frequencies, meditations. There's even stuff now that they talk about like intuitive eating, which is interesting that like intuition is being used in different areas a lot more. So I think, just keep your eyes open and comment on like how you would cultivate intuition. I think that's kind of an interesting thing to think about.
Keep all three of them open.
All three of them. I.
If it's muscle, then you should use it. Like, try to find the best environment where trial and error doesn't like cause some significant damage. And then always trust your intuition, and then really take note where it was wrong, and then take note where it was right. By significant damage, I mean like don't lose a job, don't lose a significant other by death or by breaking up. Death is probably worse than breaking up, but one can argue.
One can argue. So dark.
I know, right? Just that nihilist gas pedal. But those sorts of things, like explore what the wisdom of life has taught you, and through trial and error, you'll you'll definitely build it up for sure. But I would say intuition is one of those divine muscles that you should definitely work on, and never feel ashamed for being wrong. That's where like I get probably more feminine than masculine, is that I trust my intuition much more than my rational mind.
Yeah. Well, and there's a great Agatha Christie quote that I wanted to end on. It says, "Intuition is like reading a word without having to spell it out. A child can't do that because it has so little experience. A grown-up person knows the word because they've seen it often before." So yeah, intuition, it's a type of knowing that's uncluttered.
Ooh, are you saying that dyslexics are inherently intuitive? Because dyslexics read by pattern recognition.
If I'm actually dyslexic, then yes, let's go with that. I'm in
If
favor.
not, then no.
As long as the answer benefits me, I'm
That's
for
fair.
it.
The egoist would be very proud, but the anti-egoist might have a word or two with you.
Anti-egoist can shut up.
Like the Buddhist.
I don't want none. but that's all I got. Thank you so much, guys, for that was a really fun one. Intuition. It's such a God, there's like so many ways you can go with it, and like Mike was saying, I think it's really important to play with that in your own life, to think about it, read about it, ponder it, etc.
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 Well, thank you so much, Ayla, for bringing that conversation to our table. It was a great one as usual. What did you guys think out there? If you like this episode, give us a thumbs up and maybe a comment. What is one of the times your intuition led you to the right place, maybe, or even led you astray? Let us know in the comments. We would love to hear from you.
Or to this episode.
What's that?
Or to this episode.
What about?
Intuition leading you to this episode because it's called Intuition.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for disrupting my flow yet again.
I'm happy you added the or. So it would have been like, if it would have led you right or wrong to this episode.
Well, thank you guys out there. We really appreciate it. Please give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. We are here for you every Friday night around 8 p.m. We will be back next week, and it'll be Mike's turn, so stay tuned for that.
Ooh,
We
you
are
know
part. What are we going to do?
We're going to do names.
Names. All right.
Power.
Interesting.
Names or
What's in a name?
All right. Well, yeah. Go check that. You be sure to check us out next Friday then, where Mike will be talking about names and what is in a name for sure. We're part of a podcast network called Thinkering Talks on Facebook. You can check that out there at Thinkering Talks page. We have friends who do podcasts. We got Keelan, who is a part of Screen Time Continuum on Wednesdays and Sundays. He has his own podcast called If Numbers Could Talk. It's on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Go check him out. Also got a podcast called This Married Moment with his wife that he's doing now on Saturdays around 10 a.m. So you can go check him out on that too. They both have Facebook pages and YouTube pages. You can check us out on Screen Time Continuum Wednesdays and Sunday nights at 8:30 p.m. And we also have Dijon the Mustard doing Strawberries and Coffee on Twitch Thursday nights and Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10:30 p.m. At Strawberries and Coffee on Twitch. So go check him out as well. But I think that's all we got. We'll see you next time, Cognonauts. Until then, stay out there, and we'll catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.
Outski.
What are you, Russian?
Outski.
I was trying to change it from
We go
later.
out